Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Hello, all you fantasy football users. Welcome to the Fantasy Football GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, as always, Jeff Malinoff, and with me is my partner in crime, my enemy, my opponent, once again, for 45 push-ups later in the segments.
Man, you're on a losing streak.
I am on a losing streak. This is true.
45, man.
45 push-ups on the line.
You're
I was on a
when you see your family for the holidays.
I was on a winning streak. Then you were on a winning streak. And
you were on a winning streak?
I beat you twice in a row, same as you. You beat me twice, I beat you twice.
Mm-hmm.
You don't remember doing push-ups?
I do.
Okay.
I did them once.
Twice in a row. Anyways, welcome.
Are you going to get back in the win column?
Yes, I will, but we'll get on that in the third final segment. But first, we got to do our stardoms and situms.
You probably won't, though.
We're going to do our stardoms and situms first, and then we'll do our bold predictions for the week, and then we'll get into that. But first, let's do our stardoms.
Go ahead, cowboy.
Well, that would have worked if Dak Prescott was my pick for stardom in the quarterback position. But it's not. Actually, it's Case Keenum.
Okay. Tell me why you're starting
They're
against
facing
the Cleveland Browns.
Because Denzel Ward is out. And that is one of the leading interception leaders on their team. And that's going to be a huge missed opportunity for them. And I know we lost Emmanuel Sanders. And he struggled a lot against the San Francisco 49ers. But I think he's ready for a bounce back.
Oh, really?
And they're not out of the playoffs yet, so I think they're going to have to throw the ball a lot this game.
I don't know about that, man. I'm very skeptical. So how many fantasy points do you see him getting? Because this is like put up or shut up time.
Mm-hmm. Nice. We'll put that as our title. I'll give him at least 20.
At least 20.
That's pretty solid numbers.
20? Whew. So you're banking on 2 touchdown passes for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. This offense Browns sucks.
I know, but the Browns have let off a lot of points recently, so.
I know Denzel Ward's out. I mean, that's big, but it's hard to trust the Case Keenum. Like, who's he going to throw these touchdowns to?
Well, the thing is, I was torn between saying start Case Keenum or start Ryan Tannehill, but I just have a gut feeling about Case Keenum more than Ryan Tannehill. Mm-hmm. Because Ryan Tannehill kind of relies too much on his running backs. And I know Case Keenum does the same with Philip Lindsay, but Philip Lindsay he can also catch the ball. And the thing is, Ryan Tannehill, he doesn't, like, other guys have good games around him. He doesn't have solid games himself. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
I have a kind of an obvious one. I think it's the only obvious pick that I have here, but start Jared Goff. I know some people have been worried about him because he hasn't been putting up the numbers lately as he did earlier in the year. He threw 4 picks. He had negative fantasy points, in fact, last week. He didn't do well in Week 14 either, but I'm here to tell you not to worry, folks. This will be a huge Jared Goff bounce-back game, so if you have another decent quarterback that you're thinking about starting over Jared Goff, maybe like a Trubisky or something like that, do not do it. Play Jared Goff. He'll finish in the top 5 for sure this week.
For sure.
For sure.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, I think he'll have at least 250 yards and at least 2 touchdown passes. At least 2.
Okay, I have one more quarterback.
Go ahead.
And, he had a pretty good game last week, and I think he's going to continue this. Nick Mullins.
Interesting against
because
Seattle.
he's been in Seattle. I know
He struggled
but
against
this
Seattle.
is not at Seattle. This is
Still the same
at
defense,
Levi's.
no?
Granted, but it's at Levi's, and I feel like it's a different situation when it's a home game instead of playing at Seattle.
So what are some quarterbacks that you're starting Mullins over? Because that's like where, like when we talk about starting or sitting, that's where we have to figure out which ones we're benching for a guy like Nick Mullins. So would we be benching somebody like Cam Newton?
I'm gonna say
Tom Brady.
Well, that's who I was gonna say. Tom Brady, because he's playing a Pittsburgh team that needs a win, and Brady hasn't been Brady recently.
So you're saying Mullins will have more points than Tom Brady?
I
Fantasy
do.
points.
I do.
It could happen.
Yes, it can. And he has George Kittle, who's arguably one of the best, if not the best, tight end in the NFL.
Yeah.
Well, like, maybe
didn't
not
have
the best, but
game against Seattle though. That
Yeah.
needs to be said.
But he's coming off one of the best game of his career,
Mm-hmm.
so the only way is to his momentum is at all time high.
Maybe. But he could easily get 40, 50 yards. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Seattle's such a good defense. But we'll see. I don't like these two picks that you have, but they could work out. Absolutely. I
just went with the non-obvious choices.
I went with Lamar Jackson as my stardom. He's outside the top 10. He might not have the biggest upside, but against Tampa Bay, I kind of expect this game to go where the Bucs really struggle on offense, turn the ball over, and I think Lamar Jackson will have the opportunity to get a couple touchdowns. He might get a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. He's the type of player that could get 100 yards rushing and 150 to 200 yards passing in this game because Tampa Bay, as we know, is a terrible, terrible defense. So I say Lamar Jackson. I would start Lamar Jackson over somebody like Dak Prescott. I would start him over maybe a Kirk Cousins, to be honest with you. I just like that matchup this week.
Yeah, I can easily see that too, and he's had a pretty good couple of games as of late.
He's been decent. All right, so do you want to go quarterback or running back now?
Let's go running backs, unless you have another quarterback.
Let's go running back.
All right. Well, I said Case Keenum, but I'm going to go the other spectrum and pick Nick Chubb and start him against Denver.
Okay.
He's starting to become a...
Is that an obvious pick, though?
He's
is anybody going to bench Nick Chubb? That's all I'm wondering.
I don't know, but he's not in the top 10.
He's in the top 10.
Not in the rankings I on USA
Really?
Today. Yeah, USA Today.
Where do they have him ranked?
He's at 15.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Who do they have ranked ahead of him?
They have
Who's 14, 13, and 12?
12 is Delvin Cook, 13 is Joe Mixon, and 14 is actually Damian Williams from Kansas City, which he did have touchdowns. So
Nick Chubb hasn't he had the most fantasy points in the league in the last 4 weeks? I mean, he's been on fire. He's scoring every single game. That is an interesting rankings list, I will say.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going by the rankings, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had 15 points last week. I don't think anyone in their right mind is benching Nick Chubb. If they do, you should probably slap him.
Well, I'm just saying Von Miller might have something to say about that, but that...
The Broncos' run defense isn't that great.
Yeah.
It's their pass defense, or they're rushing the quarterback, I guess, is pretty decent. But
well, the thing is, they had such a poor passing defense last week, but yet the rushing offense for the Niners was struggling, and that's a pretty consistently good running game. So that's why I'm saying that might not be as easy as everyone thinks it is for Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So a running back who's been struggling a lot, David Johnson. He had 61 yards last week, no touchdowns. Now, this offense is really bad. This offense is super, super terrible, but the Atlanta Falcons are terrible, and their defense is terrible, and I just believe in the talent of David Johnson. I know some people are probably frustrated with him because he hasn't been giving the fantasy owners what they want in this season in terms of production. It's easy to sit him this week, but I think that this is a week where he's going to score once or twice. I think he'll total 100 yards, 4 or 5 catches or so. I think he'll have a decent fantasy game. You're looking at about 15 points or more, so I say start him.
Yeah, okay. I can see that. Another running back of mine is actually, I know since who's been struggling is James Conner for Pittsburgh. And I don't believe he's actually playing, He's not playing. So let's go with his backup, Jalen Samuels.
You say start him, huh?
Yeah. New England's running defense is not... Their defense is just not the best.
Mm-hmm.
So take advantage of it.
Pack running.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just feel like but James Conner's had such breakout games. I think Samuels can do the same thing.
Samuels had a really. Does it bother you though that he had such a bad game against the Raiders, who are the worst defense?
I have to say that sometimes you just have those bad games. That's all I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just have those slumps and you come back better than ever, or come back better and want to improve. That might be the case here.
Yeah, it could happen. I see it as uphill battle for him, just because I don't know if he's very good. To just be honest, I don't know if he's good.
Well, again, like I said, the Patriots defense is nothing to write home about either. That's why I'm saying maybe take advantage of the poor running defense.
Mm-hmm. He did some good work in the passing game last week, so maybe he can do the same there.
Yeah,
he could be a solid RB2 possibly.
Yeah, or even flex.
Mm-hmm. All right, running back that I say to start this week is Gus Edwards.
I like him. I like him a lot.
Gus Edwards against Tampa Bay. Like I said, I mentioned with Lamar Jackson. I see the Ravens. I see the Ravens running the football over 40 times this week. I really do. I think they'll
40 times.
Yeah, I mean that's what they do, right?
I know.
They run the ball. I think they'll have the lead.
It just on paper that sounds like a lot, doesn't it?
They'll have the lead a lot in this game, and they'll just be looking to run the football. I think they'll just control the clock. Lamar Jackson won't have to make too many plays with his arm. I could see Gus Edwards getting 15 to 17 carries and a touchdown. So I like him to start. I know that Kenneth Dixon got some play last week for the Ravens, and I understand the concern.
But what are those carries going to be? Up the middle for 2 yards, or?
I think Gus Edwards will still be the lead back. He'll get the most carries. He'll score a touchdown.
How many yards?
At least 75. At least.
Okay.
At least 75 on 15 carries. So
I was just curious how you thought that was going to go, because
I think it's good for
that's
15
important to think
plus
about.
fantasy points, in my opinion. So we'll see. All right. So where do you want to go next? Wide receiver?
We can go wide receiver. Sure, why not?
All right, go ahead.
All right. Well, the thing is with a lot of wide, since we saw some of the best wide receivers play on Thursday, we saw some great performances. This is my most obvious choice, but he's been on such a roll that I have to say Juju Smith-Schuster. Mm-hmm. Just he's been on such a roll lately, and he's been doing so much better than Antonio Brown.
But everybody's starting him, right?
Well, you got Jared Goff. I got Juju Smith-Schuster.
Okay.
I think that's a fair trade.
Jared Goff has been struggling.
Yeah, but Pittsburgh has been not the best either.
But Smith-Schuster's not getting benched by anybody, right? I mean, would you bench him over anyone? I mean, really?
I don't know, but there are some surprises,
Mm-hmm.
Because there have been some multiple players that are just like Amari Cooper might be on a lot of people's benches.
Where is Smith-Schuster ranked on the USA Today ranking?
He's on 6th. But the thing is I'm saying Amari Cooper did so well that he might be on most people's benches, and now they might say, maybe we should take this chance. And
Yeah, I don't know. I would be shocked if anybody sat Juju this week. I mean, he might not be the best daily fantasy play, but season long, he's got to be up there. Wide receiver, I'm going to say start both Panthers receivers, and no, not Devin Funchess. I'm talking about Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore, the two playmakers.
DJ Moore's been being picked up a lot on waivers recently.
Yeah, he's ranked 23rd this week, Samuel at 25. That matchup against the Saints, I like it to be a shootout. It's on Monday Night Football. Cam Newton can't really throw very far, so he's been relying on a lot of short passes to these two players, get the ball in their hands and make plays. Plus, Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore are both good candidates to receive a couple carries in this game, as the Panthers are really creative in their run game. Not just McCaffrey and Cam, but we've also seen DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel get carries almost consistently every single week. So,
and you notice they're running the ball a lot more because of the Cam Newton injury that he is most likely sustained. So don't expect some deep passes either, though.
Yep, and I like the playmaking ability for these two wide receivers that are very shifty. They're not the biggest, but they're fast. So we could see a lot of plays where they try and go east and west, get the ball in their hands, and let them go upfield. So I like DJ Moore and Samuel both to get at least 5 receptions for 60 yards and possibly a touchdown. I could see either one of them going off, but I think you'll see at least 2 consistent games from these two.
Yeah, absolutely. And my next wide receiver is actually a guy that has kind of been under the radar with a great team, and that's the Rams, Brandon Cooks. He's been kind of under the radar, hasn't he? A little bit.
I mean, he had a tough game last week, but he's still one of the top 10 receivers in fantasy football. I think he's ranked at 12 this week.
He's ranked 10 in USA Today, but I'm just saying, like, he's not like Goff's like, I'm gonna every time we're in the end zone or every time I need to pass.
He's not a red zone guy, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's why people are kind of hesitant to start him because he's not really getting in the end zone as much as most would expect.
He's not a red zone guy.
But I don't know. I expect a lot of deep balls thrown to him because Philadelphia's.
But this is don't you kind of think this is an obvious one? Philadelphia is like the worst pass defense. You know, you think people?
I don't
would
know.
sit him?
Brandon Cooks. I've seen on most people's benches. I just don't see a lot from him.
What fantasy teams out there have two better receivers than Brandon Cooks? Is that
I know Devontae Adams has had has a lot of points recently, and there's also like. Again, Adam Thielen was probably not everyone's like first wide receiver choice, but he became out of nowhere, and people probably picked Brandon Cooks first because of how good the Rams did last year. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of guys I think ahead of Brandon Cooks.
I would be shocked if anybody sat Brandon Cooks this week in a very plus matchup against Philadelphia.
The thing is, Philadelphia shocks people too in these situations and how good they play.
They're shockingly terrible this year. I have Josh Reynolds as my stardom. He's a guy anywhere between 25 and 35 in the rankings. Yes, he's the third receiver on the Rams. You just talked about Brandon Cooks. He's an obvious starter to me, but Josh Reynolds saw 7 targets last week, and he is their third receiver now. He takes over for Kupp. He's on the field for 90% of the plays. He has 20 targets over the last 3 games. Look, they're playing the Eagles. There's going to be some passing touchdowns. Josh Reynolds could get one. I also think he's a guy that if you're looking for a last-minute flex, maybe you're unsure about some players, throw in Josh Reynolds. I think he'll get, again, 7, 8, maybe 9 targets, possible touchdown, 60, 70 yards receiving. I think that's where his sweet spot is, but it could be higher this week.
Mm-hmm. I have one more wide receiver.
Go ahead.
And it's Dante Pettis. Mm-hmm. And I say this because a couple weeks ago he had an amazing career game. And then the next week it was a career game for Kittle. Mm-hmm. And I think one of these two, either Kittle...
He had the big game against the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, that's why I'm putting him. He had a great game against Seattle, and I think he can... And obviously they're going to game plan for him again because they don't want the same thing happening because they have film and all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I think Pettis is still going to be a threat.
He's turning out to be a good wide receiver, too. I know that early in the year, usually rookie receivers struggle to crack the lineup, and he did, but... He's starting to make some plays with Nick Mullins of all quarterbacks, so his future could be bright. In this
I think it really shows how good of an offensive mind Kyle Shanahan really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Tight ends?
Tight ends. I have David Njoku as a tight end start this week. He's a player that is right in the middle of the rankings, but he only caught 3 balls last week. And tight end's a position where you see a lot of fantasy owners sit tight end, start him week to week. David Njoku is going to be a player, I think, that will have a big game this weekend for the Browns. Baker Mayfield loves him. I think you could see a touchdown for Njoku. And let's be honest, when we're talking about guys at tight end outside of the top 4, and the top 4 I mean Kelsey, Ertz, Kittle, and Gronk. Those are basically the top 4, in my opinion. You're looking for touchdown upside. I think Njoku has touchdown upside against Denver tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. I have a guy playing on Monday night, if that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just said 2 receivers on Monday night.
Yeah, this is true. You said Carolina. Ben Watson.
Okay.
He's been kind of under the radar recently, but he's had some games where he kind of explodes multiple touchdowns in some red zone situations. And Carolina's not the best in the red zone.
Yeah,
they're really struggling defensive in the red zone. I think Watson will be a perfect stardom.
Carolina is bad against receivers
and tight ends. Yeah. So,
and you just worry that Breeze will throw to somebody else because I'm sure Watson will be open at times, but you just worry that somebody else will be open.
That's why I think so many people have him on his bench because they don't know. But I think this game against Carolina will be one of those games he's going to play. He's going to have a good game.
My second tight end is a guy who's also right there on the bubble of shouldn't I start him? CJ Uzomah from Cincinnati.
He's back and forth on our list.
The Raiders are bad against tight ends. Raiders are bad against
everybody.
We saw Kelsey dominate them just a couple weeks ago. Uzomah, he's going to be a decent play this week. I think there's touchdown upside there. I think he'll see 6 or 7 targets. I mean, you're looking at 4 or 5 catches. You just hope he gets one of those in the end zone. So I like him this week.
Yeah, good choice. I'll go one more tight end. The thing with this one is I'm hesitant, but again, this guy sometimes goes off, sometimes not. But Jesse James, he's the number 2 tight end, granted behind Vance McDonald, but sometimes Vance doesn't have these good games, and James kind of takes up the load when it comes to the tight ends and receiving. And so I think against New England, again, a team that's not good on the defensive side, he can take advantage and score some touchdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe he'll be the one that does it. You know, It's funny you bring up Jesse James because he's the player that had that catch against the Steelers last year that they rolled incomplete where he dove into the end zone for the touchdown.
And it rolled over his hand.
And they said he didn't control it even though he caught it and then dove for the pylon, or dove for the
by the rule book, it is the correct call what they did, but it's still a terrible rule and they should abolish it.
All right, so let's move on to defenses. I have a defensive start for the week. That's the Redskins. They're ranked at 13 right now. Jacksonville. That's all that needs to be said. They're going up against Cody Kessler. The Redskins have a good defense. Their offense is a problem. But in this game, it looks to be like a low-scoring game. If Josh Johnson and Adrian Peterson, if they can just control the ball, maybe not turn it over, there's a chance that the Redskins defense could be the one of the 2 defenses here that actually has more fantasy points, even though the Jacksonville Jaguars are ranked in the top 2 or top 3 in defenses for this week. So it could be the other way around because the Redskins, that defense has an opportunity to get some interceptions, sack the quarterback. They could do some damage.
Yes, absolutely. And my defense, maybe an obvious choice is some, but some people are really underestimating them. That's the Buffalo Bills. I know they're ranked very high on the defensive ranking, but people think, it's still the Buffalo Bills. But they're playing a Detroit team that's, Detroit.
Not good.
Yeah. So I think, man, if you have the Bills, start them.
Yeah, that was my other stardom. Was the Bills.
Like, they're ranked so high, though, but yet they're so underrated.
Yep. Do you have another defense? Because
No.
my other one was the Bills.
Yeah, that was just my main one.
All right, cool. So we should take a break, but before we do that, I want to tell you about Audible. There's no better place to listen to audiobooks than Audible. Get your first audiobook free along with 2 selected Audible original titles and exclusive fitness programs when you start a 30-day trial. So take the time to listen on Audible. Just visit audible.com/GSMC book or text GSMC book to 500 to get started today. Right now, for a limited time, you can get 3 months of Audible for just $6.95 a month. That's more than half off the regular price. Again, all you have to do is go to audible.com/GSMC book or text GSMC book to 500.
What happens to your decision-making when you drink? Well, after one drink, you feel confident. A few more, and calling your ex at 1 a.m. seems like a great idea. And you're pretty sure the secret to a great taco is 4-day-old macaroni. The bottom line, drunk you doesn't make great decisions. So you're risking a DUI or worse if you count on him to get you home. Plan before you party. Get home safe. Brought to you by Washington.
Welcome back, everyone, to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We talked about our stardoms. Now it's time for our sit-ums. I think that's more fun, too.
Go ahead.
Well, sit-em, we're going to start with quarterbacks,
See what
as
stuff
always.
you can come up with here.
See some stuff I can come up with. Okay. You might be shocked by this one. Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson?
Russell Wilson.
Why would you sit him against a bad 49ers defense?
They're coming off a strong defensive effort against the Broncos.
Come on, man.
Can you hear me out?
All right, go ahead.
They like to rush the quarterback, and, Who
likes to rush the quarterback?
And I think this is for Richard Sherman. They're going to win this one for Sherman. You know what I mean?
Who likes to rush the quarterback, though? Not the Niners. They're one of the worst sack teams in the league.
Buckner. I would just say DeForest Buckner is just...
He's good, yeah.
He's playing extremely well. And I don't know. I just have a gut feeling.
So Wilson will finish outside of the top 10 quarterbacks this week?
Yes.
Yes. Wow. I didn't expect to hear that. I was right when I said, what are you going to come up with? I was shocked.
Well, I don't want to come up with some obvious ones.
I say sit Aaron Rodgers. Some people might say that's obvious, but
That
Aaron
is
Rodgers is
pretty
still
darn obvious.
one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And considering that he has, one turnover over the last, I don't know how many games, he's been playing pretty good.
Yeah, just his team isn't.
Yep. He had 2 touchdown passes last week. I have him outside my top 10 this week. I could see him being started by, pretty much nobody's benching Aaron Rodgers nowadays, even if they should. But I would say don't play him against the Chicago Bears at Chicago.
Oh, yes, and Chicago is arguably the best defense in the NFL. So I understand where we're getting at. My next quarterback, well, this might be an obvious one. I'm not sure. But Nick Foles. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people picked him up because, Nick Foles, Super Bowl MVP. Because he was picked up a lot when he was announced the starter. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say Nick Foles, sit him. Because I don't trust him against the Rams.
I don't know. If you're starting Nick Foles, then who the hell is your starting quarterback that you're replacing? That's what I want to know.
Carson Wentz?
Yeah, Carson Wentz has been terrible too.
Yeah,
that would be a brutal combo there to go from one to the other.
Well, of course, also someone might have picked up Jameis Winston or Cam Newton, for example.
Mm-hmm. So my sit-em is Winston. He's been killing it in fantasy football. He's been one of the top 5 quarterbacks since he was reinserted in the starting lineup. Even last game, he was only 18 of 38, but he had a decent game. I think this matchup is terrible because Baltimore not only can get after Jameis, but they don't give up a lot on the back end. They're the best pass defense against deep passes, and Jameis Winston has been thriving on those this year. I think it's a really bad matchup for him, even though he's been putting up points. He's also played decent defenses and still put up decent numbers. I say avoid him this week. I think it's a sucker's
Avoid
bet.
him like the plague.
I think it's a sucker's bet this week for sure.
Okay.
All right, let's go to running back.
Sure, let's go running backs. Well, I'm not sure if this is an obvious one also, but since he's returning, Leonard Fournette against Washington.
He had a tough game last week.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think some people still have him starting. Don't you think so?
Yeah, for sure.
But I say avoid it. How the Jaguars been playing is pretty mediocre.
Yeah, he had 3 games of over 20 fantasy points before last week's dud. So he could have a good game. He's always a threat to score, like at the goal line. He's one of the best short yardage backs when it comes to goal line carries.
Like Cody Kessler's a quarterback also, so he might be getting a lot more rushes. But I don't know. I just don't see a big game out of him.
I say a player who was the leading player in fantasy football last week, Derrick Henry. He's on my sit list. Don't play him because he's the kind of guy that people picked up and they're like, oh my God, he scored 50 fantasy points. He must be on a roll. He must be on a tear. I think you're going to see Derrick Henry get less than 45 rushing yards this week against a decent New York Giants defense. Let's be honest. Derrick Henry had a couple big runs the other day.
He had a 99-yard run. Minus a 99-yard
run and a 52-yard touchdown. So, he had more than half of his yards on 2 carries. Not to say he didn't have a great game. He absolutely had the best game of his career. But I think it's a fluke more than a likely performance from him. Mm-hmm. So, I don't see him getting close to 100 yards, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Understandable.
All right. Who do you have next?
Well, he kind of disappointed last week. But again, it's just one of those things that maybe it's how the defense he's playing. I'm not sure. But Philip Lindsay.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
He struggled a lot against San Francisco and playing a much better Cleveland defense, a much more talented Cleveland defense. So I think maybe avoid Philip Lindsay at the moment.
Didn't Lindsay have a decent game against the Niners, though? He scored a touchdown.
Yeah, 1 rushing touchdown, but nothing much more. It was a 1-yard touchdown run, so it wasn't like he exploded out of nowhere.
Yeah. But, he had a decent fantasy game. Yeah, I could see him not having the best game tomorrow for sure. So one guy on my sit list is James White. He's a player that was one of the darlings of the league.
I was considering him on my list as well.
He was one of the darlings of the fantasy football season. He's
Well, I think it was like losing Dion Lewis. He's going to get a lot more of the passes, a lot more.
And he did. But lately they've been going away from him. I don't know if teams have just been game planning against him, or the addition of Rex Burkhead back to the lineup has changed some things.
And also Sonny Michel. I think you have to put that in perspective too.
But James White, I mean, like last week he had 4 carries, 13 yards, 2 catches for 15 yards. I just think that.
And how many carries did Michel get? Like 20.
Yeah, I would say sit James White. It's way too risky to play him, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on.
Wide receivers?
Yep.
All right. Now this one's going to be a little interesting, but I said Juju Smith-Schuster as a starter. I'm saying bench Antonio Brown.
Antonio Brown getting the bench.
Well, he's almost non-existent now. And with after Roethlisberger said, I wish we gave it more to Smith-Schuster, he's barely been throwing it to Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's
I think Antonio Brown will outscore Juju this week.
Ooh, you think so?
I think so.
Okay.
You can't bench Antonio Brown.
I don't know.
You would bench Antonio Brown?
My mom had Antonio Brown last couple of weeks, and she said, I've lost because of him. So
I'm sure there was other reasons.
But he was one of the most disappointing numbers.
He had 35 yards last week. That's a really disappointing game. But you're telling me right now that if you were in a semifinal fantasy football
depends
game,
who's on my bench, man. I don't know. Antonio Brown's been struggling.
Brown's
it's hard to trust after 35 yards. That's very hard to trust a guy that's going to come out and say, "Oh, he's going to help me win this game."
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Thielen had a bad game too last week. Michael Thomas.
The thing is, that's Kirk Cousins' go-to. Roethlisberger doesn't like Brown. He said it publicly.
Come on, man. Antonio Brown is one of the best receivers in fantasy football.
I don't know how he's been playing. Roethlisberger doesn't think that.
He doesn't think that?
No.
Why would you say that?
Well, have you heard him say publicly?
I'm just saying that sounds absolutely ridiculous that you would sit Antonio Brown in a fantasy football semifinal game.
Well, sometimes you got to go with your gut, and I'm going with my gut on this one. It's very hard to trust Antonio Brown in this situation where he came off a 35-yard game, and Roethlisberger said, I wish we don't throw to Antonio Brown often. Oh, look who has the arm and left the choice of who to throw to. Roethlisberger.
So this year, Antonio Brown has 12 touchdown catches on 1,063 yards. 2 weeks ago against the Chargers, he had 10 catches, 154 yards, and a touchdown. I don't think Antonio Brown hurt your mom on December the 2nd against the Chargers.
Yeah, he has. I didn't say he's playing nothing but bad games, but I'm just saying.
Last week was for sure his worst game of the year, by far.
Yeah, but again, it's one of these things that I think Roethlisberger is just. I don't know. I feel like he's going to resent him.
So let's hear. What do you think a stat line will be for Antonio Brown?
I'll say he gets a couple. I'll say he gets at least 5 catches, but I'm going to say he gets under 100 yards receiving.
No touchdowns.
No touchdowns.
So under 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
5 for what? Let's
say 80 yards.
80, no TDs. So then that's 10.5, 11 fantasy points. Okay.
But for playoffs, you need more than that from your receiver, especially year one.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with for Siddums I'm gonna say the entire Bucs wide receiving core because all 3 of them have been getting a lot of play. Mike Evans, Adam Humphries, and Chris Godwin have been playing exceptional. There's been a lot of fantasy value there against the Ravens. I talked about Winston earlier. I don't like their prospects. Maybe one of them has a decent game, but I think you
also need to put in perspective who's their quarterback.
Well, I mean, they've been putting up all types of numbers. In fantasy football numbers, they're the best trio.
I know it's crazy to think about, but sometimes it's just like, who are they playing? You got to look at.
The Bucs throw for like 300 plus yards a game. That's just a thing, right? Like they get a bunch of.
I don't know.
Adam Humphries had a 3-week period before last week,
and also he just got destroyed last week.
He was the 3rd highest points getter for wide receivers. It was crazy. All right, do you have another wide receiver?
No, that's good. I'm good.
I say sit Corey Davis and Kenny Galladay. Corey Davis against the Giants, up and down, tough matchup. Galladay, he had a rough game last week, and they're playing against the Buffalo Bills. So, all right, let's go to tight ends.
All right, we go tight ends. Like the obvious top 3, you're not gonna ignore the Ertz, the Kittle, and the Kelsey. But you know what? Eric Ebron. I know that's gutsy. Trust me, he's had a lot of good touchdowns. But he's also had games where he's non-existent. And this might be one of them. Dallas is on the up and coming right now. Dallas is playing extremely well on the defensive side. No one's really looking at that. And Ebron, he's had games with like 2 to 3 touchdowns. I get that. But he's had games, like I said, where he doesn't show up. So that's why I'm saying maybe you should look at the defense he's playing and say, sit him.
Yeah, and for me, I'm following the same theme of sitting Bucs players. Cameron Brate, he had 2 touchdowns last week. He's ranked in the top 10 for tight ends. I say don't play him. I don't think there's any chance he scores twice in this game. Maybe he gets a touchdown. We'll see what happens with him, but I don't like him at all this week. Who's your next tight end? Or do you have another one?
That was my only tight end that I thought was necessary.
I have one more. Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph is a player who is a consistent starter in fantasy leagues. Single-digit yards this last week. He just doesn't seem like he's the 3rd or 4th option in this offense, to be honest with you. He just, at this point, seems like he's just a guy out there. So I say do not play him against a Miami Dolphins team that's very stingy against tight ends.
Yes, and they're known for miracles.
Defenses?
No, just that team in general.
No, I mean, do you want to go to defenses?
Oh, defenses? Sure.
All right, who are you sitting this week?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. But I will have to say how this defense has been playing really well. But again, they could also just maybe not come up with the big numbers when it matters. And so,
Who's this?
Well, are you ready for it?
I am ready. I think we're all ready.
Los Angeles Rams.
Los Angeles Rams, okay.
Because I know Nick Foles is starting, and
you're loving Foles this week against the Rams, huh?
He's Super Bowl MVP. I don't know. I just have a gut feeling that people are. I think he might have a breakout game because he's had these random breakout games. Where like, where did this come from? And
Nick Foles playing against his old team.
But the thing is, this is how I say it. He plays to how the other team plays. You know what I mean? They play at that level. So if he plays against a bad team, he'll have a bad game. But he plays against a great team, he'll have great games. Just like in the playoffs.
We'll see what happens. I'm interested to see what this Eagles offense looks like. I'm not excited about any Eagles offensive player, to be honest with you. Like, I don't like Josh Adams this week. I don't like Jeffrey this week. I want to see what happens because Nick Foles, yes, he won a Super Bowl MVP, but then since then he's been terrible. So
he hasn't gotten many starts, granted.
Sure. Earlier in the year, but before he was a Super Bowl MVP, don't forget he was a terrible quarterback for the Rams. So I don't know if that was a fluke or not. You could say Fitzmagic was a fluke. You could say Foles, what he did last year, was a fluke. So we'll see what happens.
Foles has had good career seasons.
He has made the Pro Bowl before, and he's also been a terrible quarterback before, too. It's like a very up and down career for him.
Just like anyone from the University of Arizona.
I highly doubt he's going to have a good game this week. But in a game where it could be high scoring, I could see Foles getting some. You also have
to look at the Rams' defense is kind of like getting hurt.
The Rams' defense played very well last week, though, and they got Aqib Talib back, who is a big addition to their team. Mm-hmm. But their defense is on the rise for sure. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested in seeing what kind of Foles we're gonna see. It could be anything. Yep. He could get garbage points, so he totally could because the Rams are gonna put up points. I think we all can agree on that.
And I just think it's like against Kansas City. You know what I mean? It just like sometimes they just give up 50 points or give up no points. It just it could go either way.
Last defense is a defense that's actually really good. They led the week last week in fantasy defensive scoring, and that was the Detroit Lions. I say bench them. I know Buffalo's not the best offense, and there are points to be gained there. I just don't like this game on the road for Detroit. I think Buffalo will run the ball a lot. I don't see opportunities there for a lot of sacks, a lot of turnovers, a lot of defensive touchdowns like they did last week. So I say sit them, even though they might be hard to pass up this week.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Like, especially when you're coming off a good game, you're like, oh, maybe they'll continue that run. But, sometimes you got to go with, like, how consistent are they? And we both know the Lions are not consistent. But that is all the startums and sit-ums we got. But we should take a break. Before we go to break, every time I'm on the road going to work, I always like to listen to stuff, and Audible is one of those stuff I like to listen to. Right now, for a limited time, you can get 3 months of Audible for just $6.95 a month. That's more than half off the regular price. Give yourself the gift of listening. While you're at it, think about giving the gift of Audible to someone on your list. For more, go to audible.com/GSMC book or text the code GSMC book to 500-500. And with this code, you will get your first audiobook for free along with 2 selected Audible original titles and an exclusive fitness programs when you start a 30-day trial. So take the time to listen on Audible. Just visit, once again, audible.com/GSMC book or text the code GSMC book to 500-500. Once again, it's GSMC book to 500-500.
What happens to your decision-making when you drink? Well, after one drink, you feel confident. A few more, and calling your ex at 1 a.m. seems like a great idea. And you're pretty sure the secret to a great taco is 4-day-old macaroni. The bottom line, drunk you doesn't make great decisions. So you're risking a DUI or worse if you count on him to get you home. Plan before you party. Get home safe. Brought to you by
Welcome back, everyone, to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We did our stardoms and situms. Now time for our bold predictions of the week. Week.
You have one?
Week.
You said you were prepared pretty early for this podcast, so let's hear your first.
Wow, way to just call me out on it.
What? Calling you out for being prepared?
No. It was just
Is that a negative?
No, not that negative. Not at all.
If I called you smart, would that be a negative too, or?
But I am going to say this. Adam Thielen.
Oh, God.
Adam Thielen is going to have over 150 yards receiving and at least a touchdown.
150 and 1 TD for Mr. Adam Thielen.
I know that's not a tough, bold one, but it's bold nonetheless.
I have Lamar Jackson totaling over 25 fantasy points.
Thank God you said points. Over 25 yards. Wait, what?
Over 25 fantasy points. I think he'll have 8 to 12 rushing. I think he'll have 5 or 6 passing.
Okay.
And then he'll score 2 to 3 touchdowns. So.
Okay. I feel you. I feel it.
Who do you got?
Okay. I was high on this guy last week, but he didn't do anything.
You're just high.
Sony Michel, over 100 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns.
Sony.
And add 50 receiving yards.
Hold on. How many yards now?
100 yards rushing, over 50 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns.
Wow.
I went there.
2 TDs. Wow. Interesting.
Drop the mic.
I am going to say Tom Brady outscores Big Ben.
Is that bold?
Well, Big Ben is ranked in the top 3, and Brady's outside the top 10, and you tried to say that Ben was going to have a big game, so I'm kind of pulling this back in that earlier conversation.
Okay.
Tom Brady will have more fantasy points than Big Benjamin Roethlisberger.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead.
All right, how about this one? How about
it?
Now I'm now doubting
you
it.
were prepared.
I was, but now I'm doubting it.
Okay, who?
I was thinking maybe Cam Newton will get more points than Drew Brees, but now I'm double checking it.
Oh, okay. So, do you want me to go then while you think about something?
No,
else?
I'm going to go with my gut. Cam Newton will have more points than Drew Brees.
Cam over Drew. Okay. This will tie into what you just said.
Okay.
I have Christian McCaffrey, who has been a stud, will have under 20 fantasy points and half PPR scoring, which would be pretty crazy because he's been getting a ton of points, usually scoring at least 20. Most of the time he's getting around 30, in fact, but under 20 against the Saints on Monday Night Football.
Okay. Let's see. Where should we go?
You tell me, my friend. You tell me.
Okay. I think you'll like this one. Jordy Nelson, 2 touchdown catches.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jordy?
Nelson.
Jordy?
Nelson.
Wow.
We had to do that for the next 5 minutes.
Does he have 2 touchdowns this year?
I don't know.
That would be interesting. I would be shocked. All right, so I'm going to go with the wide receivers. I have both Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks getting over 100 receiving yards. Both.
Oh, wow.
Both
Okay.
of them. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Jared Goff against that defense. I like Jared Goff to go drop the G off. Yep. Went there.
Okay. I'm not gonna
You
sell
got
that.
any other bold predictions?
Yes, I do. Jordan Howard, over 120 yards rushing.
Whoa. Jordan Howard?
Yes.
That Jordan Howard?
Against a weak Green Bay defense.
Okay. Jordan Howard. How many yards again?
120.
120.
Over.
Wow.
Talk about bold, right? Talk about bold.
All right. I have Elijah McGuire,
Elijah McGuire.
who's the 30th ranked running back. I have him finishing in the top 15
Whoa.
for running backs.
Whoa. You want to hear what he is on USA Today Sports?
Where is he?
52.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You all ready for this? Dun, 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 dun,
Wow.
dun, 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 dun. Sorry, I had to.
Did you have another bold prediction?
I do. Derrick Henry rushes for over 100 yards, and he goes back to back.
Derrick Henry? You talking about Derrick Henry?
Over 100 rushing yards. Book it.
Yeah, right. I'm willing to throw money on that one.
Okay. Do your worst.
Huh?
Do your worst.
My worst what?
I don't know.
Do my worst.
I don't know.
Do my worst?
Stop talking.
All right. Defense. Let's go defenses.
Okay. All right, how about this one? You ready for this one?
Uh-huh.
The Jacksonville Jaguars get at least...
Is it the Jaguars or the Jaguars?
The Jaguars.
Really?
Yes.
The Jaguars or the Jaguars?
Your mom. I don't know.
Which one is she?
I don't know. The
I
Jacksonville
thought you were
Jag...
going to make a cougar joke in there.
No, I don't want to touch her. You're welcome. The Jacksonville Jaguars will have at least one pick six.
At least one.
At least one. I'm
staying in that same game. The Redskins will be a top 3 fantasy defense this week.
Okay. I'm going to say who gets the number 1 defense.
Go ahead.
The Buffalo
Wouldn't it be
Bills.
the Jaguars?
The Buffalo Bills will have the number 1 defense in points.
I could see that. Okay. Well, how many points will Dante Pettis get, considering he's one of your stardoms?
Okay, I'll go at least 15.
At least 15.
That's good, right?
Yep. And as for Jalen Samuels, where does he fit in?
Give him 15 also.
And as for your boy Nick Mullins, where does he fit in?
22.
And your boy Case Keenum?
Give me 21.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you're going to bench Antonio Brown, and he's only going to have 5 for 80.
Yeah.
And what happens when he has 10 for 130?
Oh, look at that. I'm human. I got something wrong.
What are you going to say when you told some poor fantasy owner to sit Antonio Brown in a semifinal and he goes off for an Antonio Brown game?
I'll say...
You got to have some accountability here.
I'll take the blame, but I'm saying I'm human.
Will you send somebody something?
No.
Like a I'm sorry card or something
I'll post a picture on Instagram, or I'll send a message on Instagram saying I'm sorry.
that? What's that Instagram?
At Jeff Nominov.
Well, ain't that some stuff? You know, after we go to the break, we're going to talk about our teams that we're going to pick. But how many games have you lost now? You're right, I have lost twice. But
I've lost twice also.
Well,
I think we've only done this a couple of weeks. We haven't done this since the beginning of the season.
We've done it more than 4 times. I know that I've won at least 4 or 5 times in this.
What? No.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't keep track. Who gives a garbage anyways? We'll be right back right after
I'm
this.
just wondering if you're going to get back on the win
I'm
column.
going to win, and you're going to do 45 push-ups. I'm going to put a dumbbell on your back and make you do an extra 50 pounds.
Why would you do that?
Because
That's
you're
not part of the
mean.
bet. I'm mean?
I don't know.
Are you going to get the first pick this time or the second pick? 'Cause
I'll
it
take
hasn't been working out for you.
I'll take the first pick.
Oh,
I'll take
wow.
the first pick.
We're gonna mix it up.
Yeah.
Change something. Okay.
What? Yeah, and hold on to your hats. When we get back, we will be doing that. So
All right.
the question is, are you ready?
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to Extreme Cage Fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to our final segment of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We're doing our classic one-on-one fantasy weekly competition for 45 push-ups is on the line. I will get the first pick. I will get a quarterback first because that's how we do these things. And if you don't know the order, I pick quarterback, he picks quarterback. Mark Dane picks his first running back, then I go running back, so on and so forth. So, for quarterback, since we can't pick Mahomes, since that was yesterday, and we cannot do Monday night games, since that's our rule, give me Jared Goff.
Oh, interesting you'd pick him. Thought you were going to go Big Ben since you were so bullish on Big Ben.
No, I think I got to go with the better team in this one.
You're going to go Jared Goff, huh? That creates a situation for me. I am going, you know what? I'm going to go with Captain America. I really am. Tom Brady.
Is that Captain America? Is that his nickname?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's Tom Brady.
I'm pretty sure that's Roger Staubach, but okay.
So I get the first running back. I'm taking Gurley.
And I'll counter that with Barkley.
You're going to go Saquon, huh?
Can't take him. They can't take him for granted.
All right, so now you're on wide receiver.
Okay. Well, I picked Juju last week, and that gave me a lot of points, but I'm going to take a chance here. I'm not sure about this, but I'm going to take a risk. Stephon Diggs.
So you try to tell me that Thielen was going to be the guy to get 150 and a touchdown, and you're going to take Diggs?
Yes. Because I don't like picking guys I say start, because I feel like that's too obvious. And it also helps that I can be unpredictable.
Well, that is interesting. All right. Well, you know what? I think I am going to go with a man named, I think you might have heard of him, Antonio Brown.
I knew it.
Antonio Brown strikes back is what I'm going for.
Okay.
So then I get the tight end.
Mm-hmm.
This one's
I have
tough.
a feeling, yeah.
This one's tough this week, but you know what? It might surprise some people. I'm going to go with Gronk.
Wow. I'm actually shocked by that. Give me Kittle.
I know Gronk will outscore Kittle.
And
I know that.
As for my flex,
Yes.
give me. This is pressure. I'm feeling
Go ahead.
pressure. I'm okay. Stop talking. I'm okay. Give me Nick Chubb.
Well, I'm going to go with Ezekiel.
I was thinking about Zeke, but Indianapolis has a pretty darn good defense at the moment. They've been playing really well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was hesitant.
Picked Amari Cooper.
I was thinking about Amari Cooper, but again, I can't trust.
So let's review the teams.
Okay.
Your team, Jared Goff,
Booyah.
Saquon Barkley,
That's pretty good, too.
Stephon Diggs,
That's a gamble.
George Kittle.
That's not a gamble.
That's a gamble. Nick Chubb.
He's consistent.
My team, Tom Brady, Todd Gurley, Antonio Brown, Gronkowski.
That's the gamble right there.
Yeah, it is, because if Gronk has a good game, then Brady has a good game, and that could be a double. Mm-hmm. It's a stack right there. And then my flex.
But if he doesn't,
Ezekiel
if Brady doesn't do good, then Gronk doesn't do good. So
that's not true. You can have a fantasy quarterback do bad, and his one of his tight ends or receivers do really well.
yeah, but I don't know. Gronk hasn't had many good games lately.
He hasn't, but Pittsburgh is just what the doctor ordered.
Okay. And who was your flex?
Jared Cook just had a really good game.
Jared Cook.
My flex is Ezekiel Elliott.
That's right. So, okay, I think we have a pretty even team, I feel like. We have an even matchup here.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the running back department.
Barkley and Chubb versus Gurley and Elliott.
Yeah.
My one concern about Barkley is Tennessee's run defense is really good.
Yeah, but Barkley's a beast in himself,
I
you know.
I know.
You got to go with the talent there. But that is all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And on Monday, we'll figure out who won in the fantasy football draft. Also, tune into our football.
45 push-ups.
Also, tune into our football podcast as well as our sports podcast. That's happening also on Monday. And we will see you on Monday. Have a good weekend, everybody.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.